welcome to another up close video. So I've got some more Polkadoodles goodies to show you today. There's a new paper pad and 3 new of their smaller sized stamp sets that will be launching on Hochanda on the 25th of November. So I'm presuming I'll put this video up around that kind of a time. And Hochanda have their rewind service, so if you want to go and see some of the demos that Lou has been doing with these stamps, you can go to the Hochanda website and look back for the 25th of November, and I think it lasts for like 7 days, so you should be able to find demos and stuff if you want to have a look at them. I've got 8 samples to show you with the bits and pieces that I've got here. I didn't actually film any of them as my normal sped up style videos, but I'm sure I will be using these in some videos coming up as well, because I really enjoyed working with them and I really like how my cards turned out as well. So the paper pack that is coming out in this little release is called Vintage Candy Craft Papers, and there are 8 different designs and you get 3 sheets of each of them. My pack didn't have this gorgeous plaid design in it, but obviously you can see on the front what that design looks like, but you can see I've been using it a lot. There's only a few bits and pieces left, but this is the gorgeous pink dotty one, and it's got this almost vintage stripy kind of effect coming in on the corners. And then this one is actually tiny flowers, you can see it there I think, and they actually match one of the stamps in the stamp set as well. And that one's sort of a slightly darker blue on a lighter blue, and it's got a little bit of sort of vintagey distressing around the edge of that piece of paper too. Then there's this stripy one, sort of like a pinstripe pattern with all the different colours that are in the paper pad. And again, the plaid one would look similar to this, obviously it's just got the stripes going the other way as well. And you've also got this kind of vintage. It says they're vintage candy, but they're very subtle vintage, so they're not too vintagey. If you still like all of your bright contemporary designs and stuff, they're not too vintagey. It's just sort of a little bit of kind of aging to it really. So that's the stripy one. Then there's the yellow one as well, which is a plain yellow actually, but you can really see that kind of vintagey look that's on the edges of the paper. I think it's probably the same kind of look on all of the papers, but you can see it more here because it's just a yellow patterned paper, and they're all single-sided as well. So you can do any kind of techniques where you want to show white coming through the other side, or if you've got any of those dies that have little bits that tuck under each other. Sometimes you want the white on the other side so that you can really see the pattern and stuff. Then there's also this one, which has got flowers on it and swirly circles as the centres of the little flowers, or as little flowers themselves. And I actually used a portion of this, and I was just cutting those swirls out and using them as flower centres for some of the stamp sets as well, which I thought was a good idea. And then the final 2 are quite busy patterned papers, but they're really gorgeous, and again they coordinate perfectly with the 3 stamp sets. And this one has a repeating pattern of that gorgeous butterfly all over it. I really like this butterfly stamp. It's a really decent size as well, and looks like a proper nice focal element on the kind of A6 or American A2 kind of size of card that I like to make. So I really like that design, and obviously you can chop into this as well. One of my cards, I actually was cutting loads of little tags out of this one to create a cool background, so the pattern was broken up a bit more so it wasn't too in your face. Or one of the cards I've done, I used the background, or 2 actually, I used either of these 2 busy patterns, or maybe it wasn't quite either of these 2, but anyway, I used one of these busy patterns in the background and then added an oval or a rectangle to kind of just have the pattern around the edge so it wasn't too busy and in your face. I mean, I think that works really nicely. And then this one has got all sorts of different flowery designs on it. They're not quite exactly the same as the stamp set, but they work perfectly together. They're obviously all Polkadoodle stuff is that same gourgeous, quirky kind of doodled style, so they work really nicely together. And again, you can see there you've got that vintagey kind of stripy effect on it that's sort of aging it a little bit. So I've really been enjoying working with these papers, and I love that all of Polkadoodle stuff is made in the UK as well, and they're really high quality papers. Yeah, it says 160 GSM on here. They really are a decent weight. and they die cut nicely too, because a lot of the time you get patterned papers and they're so thin and flimsy that they don't really die cut very well, but you really do get that, you know, when you die cut you get that little beveled edge. This is the perfect kind of thickness of a patterned paper where you can still get that beveled edge and it doesn't sort of crunkle the paper. You know what I mean if you've cut patterned papers with dies before, but they work really nicely for your die cutting, and these were just some leftovers of what I've been doing for one of my cards. Yeah, so that is the paper pad. Okay, then as well as the paper pack, there are 3 stamp sets which have coordinating designs that go with the paper pack, and everything works really nicely together. So if I just get a piece of white card so you can see them a bit better. Sorry that they're dirty, but I've been using them a lot and I haven't got them in their actual packaging, but usually Polkadoodles stamps have, like, you know, the nice little logo along the top, and they give you the coloured version of what the stamps look like, so it gives you some inspiration for how you can use them. And these ones have got the colouring on their acetate, which is really nice. So I haven't got the names for the stamp sets, so this one I'll just refer to as the butterfly one because it's got that gorgeous big butterfly on it. I actually used every single stamp from this set on the cards that I've done. I really like this one. I love this sort of organic kind of leafy design, and you can stamp this multiple times to build up a pattern on your card as well, whether it's like a focal thing or a design coming in the corner of the card. This one I really enjoyed too. It's a tiny little swirl, which is kind of the kind of thing that I usually doodle as well, which is nice. But I just added 2 little wings to it and made it into a bumblebee. So it's kind of like the front view of a bumblebee. I thought that was really sweet. And this one, I actually used this in 2 different ways. I used it as like a little sprout of 2 leaves coming off a stalk for one of these flowers. And I also used it as a half butterfly, or you can stamp 2 of them and make it a full butterfly as well. So you can have tiny little butterflies flying around on your card. This one I used as a kind of flowery sort of element. These are gorgeous flowers. I think on my card I made them more standing upwards like this, but I think if you did them so they were dropping downwards like more of a bell flower, they'd look gorgeous as well. This is a really gorgeous focal flower. And I actually did some paper piecing with the patterned papers for this one, and I did it for the butterfly as well, and they work really nicely because they're nice, large, easy to cut out areas. And you can do a bit of decoupage with it as well if you want, or equally they look beautiful coloured in with your alcohol markers or your like water-based markers or watercolours as well. And then this little one, I love these little stamps that Nikki puts in all her stamp sets. It's just like a few little bubbles, but I find stamping that in like a light grey ink, my favourite light grey is the marble statue from the Nuva hybrid ink pads. It's in the Merry and Bright little set of 3. And just stamping that across the background in that really light grey ink, I think just really adds something to the background. So when you have a big open white space, it just gives the background something, you know, and adding splatters as well. With the splatters over the top of these little things, they look really cute. So that is the one I'm calling Butterfly, but I will put the real name at the bottom of the screen because I should know that by the time I edit the video. So that is that one. Then we have this one, which... what should we call this one? Let's call this one Tulip because there's a little kind of tulip flower in it. And ironically that's the only one I didn't use out of this set. I really like this one. It reminds me of like a lollipop because it's got such a long stalk on it, and it's got a gorgeous scallopy dotty design on it, and I really enjoyed using that one. I love this flower too. That's also great for the paper piecing kind of technique. I think when I was using it I did just cut the entire flower out, but you could also cut the little sections out, and as you can see here the different colouring on it, you could use the different patterned papers because you actually get the yellow, the blue and the pink in the patterned paper pad. You could actually spend quite a while trimming out all the little pieces, but it would look gorgeous when you've done it. Then you kind of have a separate flower, which is a similar kind of doodled flower to this one, however it doesn't have the lines in it and it's obviously on a smaller scale, but I use them in conjunction with each other on one of my cards. It looks really good. This one also reminds me kind of like a lollipop. I love the dotty stalk as well. I mean, if you had these two kind of in a cluster on a card, you could emulate that dotty stalk and have it for this flower as well. And you also get a tiny heart, which you could then use as the kind of foliage if you drew your own stalk for this one. You also get this tiny little, I think it's like a little dragonfly, but it's so cute. Really, really cute. And I used it on one of my cards as well. And then obviously that little tulip one, which I didn't actually use, but we'll call this set Tulip because it has a tulip in it for now. Obviously I'll put the proper name on the screen. Then finally, the last one, let's call this one the Black-Eyed Susan, because I think that's what that is. That's what I've coloured mine as. So I'm kind of guessing that's what they are. And you've got a gorgeous little dragonfly in this one as well. That also looks so adorable. Stamped and cut out, or you can do the paper piecing with it as well. I actually stamped it twice, and I think I was colouring it with Copics, and I coloured both of them. Cut one out to give the white outline around it, and then cut the other one out just with those top wings, so that I could add them a little bit 3D on the top of it, but I'll show you that in a minute. And then I love this one, the Black-Eyed Susan, kind of a flower. I just love the sketchy style that Nikki does, and some of these are actual loopy leaves and some of them are just straight lines, so you can just add like a glitter marker right next to one of the straight lines and it just adds something extra to the flower too. I'll show you that on my card. I really enjoyed this flower as well. How did I use that on my card? Oh yeah, making a cluster and colouring them similar colours to the patterned paper background. But they stand out really nicely because they're a really nice large floral design, and I also use the little leaves in conjunction with that too. And then this one I don't think I used actually, but it's like a lollipop kind of a flower. I love the small little petals on it as well, and the swirly design. Again, I really like that one. This one is another one of those gorgeous little ones that's a dotty little design, and I also use this one in a similar way, stamping it in that really light grey ink just to give some interest to a background on one of my cards as well. So those are the 3 stamp sets, and obviously everything will be linked below the video and on my blog post so that you can find their actual named ones and pick them up if you want to. And now I'll show you my samples that I've done. Okay, so I've got my samples to show you. The first stamp set I'll show you some samples for is the one we were calling Tulip. And I've got a couple of different samples that I have done with this set. I've also pulled in a couple of Polkadoodles die sets to go with these as well. I was using the Happy from the Happy Birthday one, and also the Posydoodles ovals as well. I really like their oval design, and I like that you get 2 that have the pierced edge and 2 that have a straight edge as well. I think it's a really nice mixture. So, for all of these samples, when I show you 2 for the stamp set, I've done one focusing on just the stamps, and then the other one using the papers with the stamps as well. So this one just using the stamps. This was a background that I did, it was using some Lunar paste from Cosmic Shimmer and a Phil Martin heart stencil. I think maybe it was called Doodled Heart. And I'd coloured the Lunar paste just with an ink pad, I think. I think it was Seedless Preserve's Distress Oxide actually. And it was just a background I had lying around, but that's how I'd created it. And then I just used similar colours, so I tried to pick out a colour that was similar to this colour that the the Lunar paste had ended up being. So I picked a colour out of that, and then I just decided what kind of other colours of Copics would go nicely with the design as well. So I've just gone with like a sky blue and like a eucalyptusy kind of a green, and then a nice sort of vintagey pink and the purple as well. And I used that gorgeous kind of like lollipop flower. I did a couple of them, one with the dotty stem and one of this main focal one, and just coloured them, cut them out with a little white border and clustered them in the bottom corner. And I also layered on one of those Posydoodle ovals cut from vellum, just to sort of give it, well, diffuse the background really from the heart design so that it stood out a little bit more. Then I also used the little heart from this stamp set, that tiny little heart. If you stamp 2 back to back, you can then draw a tiny little body in the centre and make your own little butterflies. So I did that with a couple of them, and I also added on a couple of the little kind of dragonfly thing that's in the stamp set as well. And then to finish it off, I used from the last up close video I did, I can't remember where I've put the stamp set now. Oh, it's over here. So this is the super sentiments that I showed in my previous up close video, and it's got tons of different sentiments that you can use on there. It's so useful, and I've used it on quite a lot of these cards actually, probably every single one. And I just did Happy Spring on this one because I kind of thought it could be like spring flowers and stuff. So that's the first one. Then the other one, using this same stamp set, I used that smaller flower and the bigger flower and stamped them all over the background, filled in any little areas with the little heart, and then I stamped the flowers onto the different patterned papers, just the flower heads, and then I chopped them out, in some cases missing these sketchy lines that were around them, so you've kind of got the sketchy design still there, but then the colour is slightly further in the design, which I really love the look of. And I used a mixture of the yellow paper, the blue paper and the stripy paper as well. And then all the centres of the flowers, instead of stamping onto another piece of pattern paper just to get the centre of the flower, I used that other patterned paper that has these flowers all over it, and I trimmed out those little swirls and used them in the centre of all the different flowers. I thought that was a really neat way of using that patterned paper in a different way. And then I've used the Happy from the Happy Birthday die set and shadowed that to go across there, and then I used the Everything from that other Super Sentiments stamp set. And then for the rest of the colouring, because I only paper pieced the flowers, I actually used a couple of Arteza Real brush pens, and the pink and green, which matched absolutely perfectly. Let me tell you the names. It was Rouge Pink was the pink one that matches the papers perfectly, and the green one, I think it was Green Tea. Yeah, it was Green Tea. So if you have any of the Arteza Real brush pens, those matched the patterned papers perfectly, and I just used that to finish colouring them in. And I went for water-based rather than alcohol-based because I'd used my VersaFine Clair to stamp the flowers all over the background, so I didn't want the ink to bleed with my Copic markers. And then to finish off the background and give it a little bit more interest, I scribbled some of that, what was the colour again? Green Tea. I scribbled the Green Tea Arteza onto my glass cutting mat, and I squeezed in a little bit of the it's the Nuvo Aqua Shimmer, the clear glitter gloss one. I just squeezed in a bit of that and then flicked it on with a paintbrush to get that splattery effect in the background. And to get this vellum to go across the card, if you notice on a lot of my cards, the vellum is usually the exact width of a ruler, and I like to rip against a ruler when I rip my vellum because you get a really delicate, like deckled, ripped edge along it. And what you do is you place the vellum under the ruler and rip against the beveled side that goes straight down and like pull like this way against it, and then you get a really nice straight rip on your vellum. So that was how I created this card. Okay, then I've done a couple of samples using the one we were calling the Black Eyed Susan. So I really like how both of these turned out. They're really quite different styles, but this one was just using the stamps and not using any of the pattern papers. And you can see here where, I did actually cut the whole dragonfly out, where you can see where I stamped 2 of those dragonflies at the top and just snipped out the wing parts without the white outline on one of them so that I could layer it up and give it a 3D effect. And then I've obviously coloured them to look like the Black Eyed Susans, and I've also added an extra of the leaves in that set as well. So those main flowers have leaves on them, but I knew I wanted to have a few extra poking in, so I added that as well. The background is a really simple background, just done with some alcohol pens and some Nuvo embellishment mousse, just giving it in a stripy fashion and splatting onto it as well, just to give it sort of bit of a metallic sheen and stuff. And I used some of the same greens that I'd use for the foliage here to tie the colours in. And then I used, again, that Super Sentiment stamp set, and I curved them around the aperture, and the aperture is actually done with the Posydoodles Circles dies. I think I used the first, like the smallest one with the pierced edge to get that aperture in this card. And I just curved my sentiment around the bottom of that aperture because I thought that fitted really nicely. And then obviously I've cut 3 of them out. They're slightly more tricky to cut out because they have the little spiky bits on them, but you know, they're kind of a doodly stamp anyway, so if your cutting's not perfect, it doesn't really matter. I don't think anybody's really going to nitpick about your fussy cutting on them. And then I coloured them with my Copics and also added in some of the Sakura jelly rolls just to give a little bit of sparkle in places. And then for the sequins, I mixed some of my usual iridescent sequins and some neat and tangled ones. I got a few little sets of the different coloured ones and I keep forgetting to use them, but I thought that yellow went perfectly on there, and then I just finished the centres with a Nouveau drop as well. So that was that one. I really do like how that one turned out. And then, I mean, look how totally different they look. It's the same stamp set, but when you bring in a patterned paper, you can get such a completely different look. So this is using one of those busier patterned papers in the background, and I just trimmed it down to the kind of size that I like to make of a card. And then I used this kind of like a windmill sort of looking flower, and stamped it 3 times and picked out the same colours from the background with my Copic markers. And the way I do that is I just bring over my colour swatches. This is why I colour my swatches right to the edge, because I can flick through all of these and go, oh, I want a pinky colour, and then I can put my markers right up against the patterned paper. And these were the 3 markers that I used because I put it right up against there and then was like, oh, that middle tone is perfect to match with the pink in that patterned paper. So then you pick out a lighter and a darker as well, and then you can get the really good blending, but the colours coordinate. And with the greens as well, which I think I used some off of here. I think it was off of here. Yeah, I think I was using green apple and Nile green, because when I put them up against in the background, that Nile green is like really close to the colour in the background. So that's how I match my colours when I'm using a patterned paper. I think I did a top tips video on that a while ago, but maybe it wasn't patterned paper, maybe it was a inky background. And then I used those Posydoodles ovals again to create the 2 layers that the stamps are sitting on. I was originally just going to do the vellum one, and then I was like, maybe I want them to stand out a bit more, so I did a white one as well, and then offset them so the white one is right down in the bottom corner of the vellum one, and I think they look really nice. And to make them a bit more prominent as well, because there's lots of black stamping on the flowers, I just took one of the Arteza fine liner pens and just ran it through all the little dots in it, because I used the 2 sizes that have the piercing around them, and I just ran it through the dots, and it gives that kind of sewing machine sort of stitched kind of a look, or it just makes it much easier to draw an outline around your shape because the pen sticks in all the little dents in there. Then again, I use that Super Sentiment stamp set to do You Are Incredible, and I also did a little bit of white pen detail in the middles of the flowers once I'd coloured them, because obviously that ties in the white oval, the white card blank, the white from the sentiments and everything. And then I finished it off with a scattering of some light pink little gemstones as well. And I think that looks really pretty. But I just can't believe the difference in cards that you can get from just using like all of your messier kind of products or your alcohol pens compared to when you bring in a patterned paper as well. So that was that stamp set, and then the final stamp set was this one. Was that the right one? No, it's not that one, is it? It's this one that we were calling the butterfly one. So this was the butterfly stamp set, and the 2 that I've done with these, again, look how different they look, because you can use different stamps from the set to give a completely different look. So this was the first one I did using this set, and I brought in that organic kind of leafy design and these small little flower heads, and also that little I mean, it's coloured green here, so I presume it's supposed to be little leaves on a branch or something. But I thought if you draw a little butterfly's body, it works really well as a side-on butterfly too. But here I've used it as little leafy sort of designs. And I've added in the flowers as well, and this is what I was saying. See, these two I put as more upright flowers, and this one I did as more of a droopy bell type flower. Oh, and the little swirly circle, this is where I made them into the little bumblebees. Don't they look so adorable? All you need to do is draw two little wings on the top of it with a black pen, and you get a cute little bumblebee. And I also just doodled in a few little tiny hearts in there to bring this red colour down further into the card. I also used that same Super Sentiment stamp set to do Wishing You a Super Awesome Day. And yeah, I just used my Copics to colour it in. I like mixing a kind of teal colour and a green colour in the foliage. I think that looks really nice. And then I balance the teal by doing the butterfly. And like I said, I balance the pinky tones by adding in the tiny hearts. And I was also using the Sakura Stardust pens to give everything a little bit of sparkle, and I put that under the bees before I put some clear gloss on there as well. And on these flowers, they've got those black dots on the top of them, so I actually used the Sakura Black Glaze pen to give those dots a little bit of like definition, and they feel a bit 3D now as well. So that's the first one. And then this one is using the paper pad as well. So I used the stripy pattern for the main background, and then I really went to town with paper piecing both of these. So I stamped the butterfly on the 3 different colours, and I stamped the flower on 4 different colours, I think, because the main base of the flower is pink. Then this ruffle is from the blue, this whole top piece is from the yellow, and then I also snipped out different sections that I'd stamped on the stripy paper to pull that in from the background as well, and then I did the bottom leaves from blue too. This was using that little stamp 2 together to make a little butterfly as well, and I also did the bumblebee on here because I just loved it so much, and I even paper pieced both of them, just, you know, stamping onto pattern paper and trimming them out. But yeah, the butterfly, I left these 2 raised up, so I did the pink one over the whole thing, and then just did the blue one on those bits just to give a little bit of dimension on there as well. And then I used the Wishing You a Fabulous Day from that Super Sentiment stamp set, and right in the background you can see there's really light grey stamping, which is all those little bubbly stamps. I think that's just, yeah, it's just the one from that set that I've used in this one, and also some aqua shimmer splatters as well. Then I have 2 final cards which are mostly focusing on the patterned papers and like different ways of using the patterned papers. So this one is showing how you can cut a busy patterned paper and more plain patterned papers into small little die cuts, like the little tags, which is the Posydoodles tag die set. It's this small one here. And how you can create a whole background from your patterned papers without using a solid piece of the patterned paper. And I also brought in one of the dies. This is the Celebrate die from Polkadoodles as well. And again, that's Super Sentiment, so it says Celebrate Your Birthday. And I did a little bit of stapling on this one as well. I did also use the stamps, because in the background I used that that burst kind of stamp from the Black Eyed Susan set. And just added that in the background, and I did a few little splatters on there as well. But I just thought that's a nice way of showing how you can use patterned papers in a smaller way. So it's a great way of using up your scraps as well. Like say you've cut off entire background for a card like this, you usually have a sort of strip left on the side, and you could get like 3 of those tags out of that as well. And then finally I did this one, which is again using that Posydoodles tags die set, and this little die that has the 2 kind of banner shapes in it. And I just cut it loads of times from the pink, the blue and the yellow, and then I just layered them up. I did also gently ink the edge of them with Hickory Smoke Distress ink just to give them a little bit of a vintagey kind of a look. And then again I used that Posydoodle oval die from Vellum just to sort of highlight the butterfly, and I brought the butterfly in again, and I did the paper piecing on it too, but I coloured the body with Copics this time. And then to finish it off, there's sequins with the Cloud9 Dream Drops in the centre of them. And again, the Sending Special Wishes is from the Super Sentiments stamp set too. So I hope you enjoyed this up-close video looking at some more Polkadoodles goodies. I had so much fun playing with these. I really do love the Polkadoodle style. I just think it's so fun to play with. And I hope you enjoyed all of the samples that I've created. And yeah, all the links will be below if you fancy getting any of the stuff. Or don't forget to go and check the Hochanda Rewind in like the week after, or yeah, the week after the 25th of November, to watch back Lou's demos using all of these products as well. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again in the next video. Bye!